The Caretaker of Tree Palace by C. Don McCallum. Chapter 11, Root. The Boy and the Bird. Scared, the broken-legged dove trembled in Doodles' hands. He recognized the little thing. His grandmother had marveled over his drawing of its once tiny beak open to a worm. Now her chair was silent and empty in the corner of the room. He walked over to it and sat down. Found it! The muffled cry of his father rang from the attic. Heavy boots stepped down the ladder folding out from the ceiling in the hallway, just outside his bedroom door. Doodles stood and walked towards his father, nesting the bird in his hands. His dad set down the dusty cage by the window in Doodles' room. Pulling a small table in from the other room, he set up the cage with newspaper, fresh water, and bird seed from a jar on the kitchen counter. Slowly, the bird calmed under Doodles' touch. The tiny heart beat fast. He traced the lines of the bird's body with his finger and thought of his dream. He thought of the empty chair and looked at the cage his father prepared to be filled. "I'll get some tape from the medicine cabinet," his dad told him. Doodles nodded and sat on the foot of his bed, facing the window, facing the wind and rain-ripped tree palace. It looked lonely, like Grandma's house was now, like he was. Is this what she meant? Is this tree palace? The sound of his father's footsteps behind him and the pulling of the tape from its rolls brought him back to his room, to the plight of the little bird. "Hold him as still as you can," his dad said. Pain crusted in Doodles' heart, and he looked into his dad's eyes. "Don't worry, son. I've done this 20 times. He chuckled, if not more. He hadn't heard his father's laugh in months, and it startled him. It reminded him of a different time, a time before birds, a time before he knew trees the way he did now. The way he was beginning to know their patience, their persistent longing for the sun, their humble acceptance of all that crossed on their paths below. Tree palace, tree palace. His mother's voice echoed in his ears as his father taped the bird's leg. The dove wept then, was still a moment before trembling again. "Hold him close," his dad said. "Keep him warm. I'll be right back." Running to the door into the storm, his dad ran straight into Tree Palace. Doodles watched from the window, seeing his father's form pass easily through the pathways made long ago amid the trees. He knew the woods, too, the familiar trails. His heart softened, and the young dove was quiet. The little bird's head nestled into its body. Its breathing became regular. It slept. The front door opened and closed. His father went straight to the cage where he set a soft bed of cedar sprigs and bark in one corner. Something familiar, so the cage won't scare him so much. The birds. Light spilled into the trees and blue filled the sky. The storm had passed, leaving a freshness. Some things were newly cleaned. Some things were newly broken. "Hoo-do-do," Gentle sang to the birds that had been her fledglings. She listened for their answer. She did not call them to her, or to the nest she and Winsome rebuilt, only to hear their presence in the trees, to hear that the storm had not taken them in the night. "Comely, nearness, to where have you flown? Do you stay in these woods, my young mourning doves?" The loving call of Comely filled Gentle's heart with sunshine. He was well and happy. But where was the other? Where was her nearness? "Nearness!" she cried. But no song came in response. Only silence. Winsome stood watchful by her side, listening for coos she may have missed. Nearness! Oh, nearness! Her heart broke at the thought of having nearness so far away. Just then, Old Crow landed in the clearing. The blackbird's eyes pierced her own and obviously saw into her despair. "What is it that you want, Old Crow?" Winsome demanded. "Can't you see that my dove is filled with sorrow? Can't you hear the pain in her cries?" "Caw, indeed, funny little bird. Indeed." Old Crow fluttered her wide black wings, strolling closer on the branch to Gentle. "Caw, I just thought you might like to hear a tale from an old crow." "A story? Does it look as if we long for a tale now?" "Nearness," Gentle wept. "Oh, nearness." "Begone, Old Crow." Winsome raised his chest. "Begone, or I'll." Very well, then. Caw, I'll go. But it shall be the first time in my many dayshines that I was turned away with a story of eagle within my beak. At the mention of eagle, Gentle hushed her weeping. Hearts always filled with admiration for the strength of that great bird, how he soared so high above the clouds, above the storms. Remembrance of eagle caused the tears of the mourning doves to cease in awe. Caw, Old Crow said in her mischievous way. Then you shall not turn me away? Tell us, Gentle said, her heart longing for news of eagle. Yes, tell us. Winsome cooed, drawing closer to the blackbird. Old Crow's head cocked to one side in a victorious sneer. It was a clearing much like this one. Old Crow pranced in a circle, one wing indicating the empty place among the trees. Eagle spread his wings, lifting himself to the heights of the glorious sky. Billowing tufts of white floated beneath him, then thinned themselves to reveal the earth below. More birds gathered to hear the tale of eagle brilliant red cardinals, sleek scissortails, and others. All eyes and ears were fixed on the old bird. Even hawks stood watch over the gathering from the top of an ancient oak. Not yet arriving at his mountain perch, eagle rested a moment on a great tree. A savanna speckled with racing gazelles extended below him. The source of the herd's fear, a lone and hungry lioness, did not escape eagle's steady and piercing vision. How I long to have the sight of eagle, said Wren. SHH, chirped all the birds. Old Crow looked at Wren, whose head then sunk, whose wing then rose for him to hide his face behind. Pacing again around the clearing, Old Crow went on with her tale. Caw, soon a single injured gazelle, lagging far behind the others in its weakness, thrashed on the ground, fed upon. From high on his throne, eagle uttered sweet words to the fading gazelle. This too shall pass, this too shall pass. A gasp could be heard throughout Tree Palace. With wonder, the birds marveled at the wisdom of eagle. Taking his leave, Old Crow cawed, eagle flew again to his kingdom above the clouds. Throwing her wings to the sky, Old Crow leapt upon the earth. Angry rumbling clouds turned mighty eagle this way and that, but never did they deter him from returning to his mountain perch and his nest. Turning on a gale wind, eagle sat down on the cliff overlooking the raging sea. Caw, caw, Old Crow cried and jumped up at the birds that shrunk back in fear. All around the old storyteller, wings trembled as if a tornado were on the horizon. Old Crow rushed in a fury to scatter the birds. Gentle and Winsome stayed their branch. Caw! Screams and smoke filled the air. Men cried out in misery upon great ships, forgetting the pride of battle. Old Crow took her place again in the clearing. What seemed like a fire built behind her eyes. In the chaos, Eagle steadied his gaze on the ever-flowing waves, snatching a fish to strengthen him along his journey home. In Eagle's beak, the fish flailed before it surrendered to the mighty one. The old blackbird acted out the snatching and the tearing of the fish. Enraptured, the other birds gasped. A few hopped, thrilled. Looking around as though to see if all eyes were upon her, Old Crow whispered slowly. Eagle looked upon the ascending smoke and rose above it, saying, "This too shall pass, this too shall pass, shall pass." Pointing a wing to the horizon, Old Crow continued her pace around the clearing. In the distance, Eagle saw his mountain vista home. His wings growing tired of flight, he readied himself for an evening of rest. Water rushed at the bottom of the ravine, and he followed it along until he reached his high perch. Old Crow held her wings high. Caw, the majesty of rock and trees, all reaching skyward to where only Eagle knew how to fly, longed for the sun. The other birds gazed towards the sun in awe. So happy all the birds seemed that they couldn't contain their good spirits. All sang out overjoyed. Gentle remained quiet, pondering the message of Eagle's story. Closing his eyes to it all, whispered Old Crow, Eagle felt the sun's warmth fade into darkness and said, "This all too shall pass, shall pass." Did it mean that her longing for nearness would pass? That all sorrow and sadness shall pass? Gentle knew well the way of the dove. Both mother and father took turns nestling and caring for the young and working hard to provide nourishment. Then the babies grow too soon, big enough to fly away and start the cycle anew. Maybe eagle meant all bad times past because they must make way for good, happy times again. It was always darkest before the dawn. Thank you for listening to The Caretaker of Tree Palace by C. Don McCallum. If you're enjoying this story, please consider sharing it with someone you know. And please like the video and subscribe to this channel to help others discover these stories.